Bring to us your poetry from inspiration sought. Come join us with your images, your verses, words, and thought. From here, we'll share your balladry with those who do not know it. This platform's here for you to show the world that you're the poet.
Welcome to episode 77 of You're the Poet, the poetry podcast featuring you. I'm host Matt Burgio, and I'm here with co-host Phil Burgio. Phil, welcome.
Anytime.
Here at You're the Poet, our purpose is to share our love of poetry with the world and invite you to do the same. We want to start by saying thank you to all of our listeners who have made You're the Poet possible. We hope you enjoy the podcast and the poetry that is shared. If you've written any poetry and you want to share it here, whether you just have an interest in poetry, consider yourself an amateur poet, or are a professional poet with published works, contact us to be a guest on a future episode. Our featured guest for this episode of You're the Poet is Natasha Akinfolarin, who is joining us from Newcastle in northeast England. Natasha, welcome to You're the Poet.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're glad you could join us, and we look forward to your contribution to the episode.
Definitely.
All right, to start things off, I'm going to do our classic segment for the episode, except this poem's not going to be a classic poem. This is a contemporary poem from poet Shirley Rose. She asked if we would do one of her poems, and her and I have done some collaboration lately. And so I told her, well, sure, I'll read one of your poems, and we're trying to get her to be a guest on this podcast. So a little bio about Shirley. She's been dabbling in poetry since 1971 when she was about 15 years old, though she started to seriously get into writing in about 2022 when she discovered Facebook. And then on there, she started her own group, Poetry Porch, which I recommend people checking out. That's a Facebook group that I'm a member of, and I've been doing some work with them. She started that primarily as a journaling page. Then she was surprised that friends, family, and other poets wanted to become members and followers, and it's an honor and privilege to be read and liked. That's a little bit of bio on Shirley Rose from Poetry Porch on Facebook. And like I said, her and I were doing some sharing of poetry forms, and I shared a form of poetry that I've been writing in that I don't really have a name for, but it's basically a 3-stanza poem using iambic tetrameter and a certain rhyme scheme. And the poem kind of loops itself back around where the first and third stanzas lines are repeated in opposite direction. So I shared that with her, and she said she would give it a try. And so this was the poem that she came up with. It's called The Winds I Calmed. Quasimodo pulls hard the ropes, and Edgar Allan Poe yells, "Bells!" while I lie here with fear and hopes. Pray my poem heals, pray my poem tells. I've tried whispers, I've tried with yells. There's no account for taste, I guess. Comments say no, more often yes. I've left heavens, tripped into hells. Pray my poem heals, pray my poem tells, while I lie here with fears and hopes, and Edgar Allan Poe yells, "Bells!" Quasimodo pulls hard the ropes. Shirley Rose.
Excellent.
I liked not just the format, but the poem itself, the meat of the poem. I liked that. That was good. Good one, Shirley. You got to come on the podcast.
Yeah, I thought she did a great job of not only capturing the form, but I loved what she did with it. I was like, man, she really put some strong poetic images in there, and I always like the allusions to other literary things like Poe and Quasimodo. Well done on that, Shirley.
I like the way the poem's it's built like a mirror. The first and the final sutra reflects the opening poem. Like a mirror, it's like creates a circle of feeling as though the poem ends where it begins. If a poem makes me smile, that means I like it. And it reminds me of the theme of it being a struggling poet. It's my poetry, healing people, because that's always what I want to do with my poetry. And also, to me, it talked about the ups and downs of being a poet. You're struggling, sharing your creative work.
Yeah.
Hoping, despite people criticizing it or liking it.
Yeah, I think any of us that put our poetry out there on Facebook or any of these social media things are sort of faced with that. Like, we're hoping our poetry is being heard and making a positive difference in people's lives, but you just never know, and there's always the critics out there.
Definitely. I get a lot of feedback, and people always say to me, like, "You're writing my story, you've just told my story," and then you get somebody saying, like, "Oh, well, you should have left him anyway. You should have left him." And I just think, when I first started sharing my poems on social media, I felt a bit angry. Then I thought, no, man, that's his anger, or her anger, not mine.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And the people who said, "You've just told my story," I was like, I'll take that to the bank, I'll have that. Anyway, I do like criticism, but constructive criticism. And it's always a gamble when you put your heart and soul into a poem. And this poem you've just read reminds me of that, because you're always hoping, but I do, that somebody's going to think they're not alone, that somebody understands them. But then sometimes you might not even get one like or one comment. You think, oh, well, God, that must have been a rotten poem. And then a month later, you get people go, oh, that was a brilliant poem. You're thinking, and that's the cycle, isn't it, with creative writing and poetry. I just think it's a gamble putting it out there. But if you don't put it out there, where does it go?
Right.
In your tray, in your bottom drawer. So I just think we take a gamble all the time. And I think most times we do heal. We do touch people in different ways. Everybody's got different kind of poetry. And I just think we do heal. Poets we do. Because the feedback I get a lot, it's like the comment I just told you.
Right.
And I really enjoyed the structure because the poem loops back to itself. It reminds me that the cycle of writing, sharing, doubting yourself, and then writing again. Even though we're doubting ourselves, we write again. Like a drug or something, but a good drug. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. And I like that she called it a mirror. I'm still looking for a title for this type of poem, for this form that I created. So I kind of like that concept of the mirror. So maybe I'll utilize that if I ever get around to coming up with a definitive name for it.
There's my gift to you.
Thank you. All right. Well, from here, we're going to turn it over to Phil to share his poem for the episode.
Okay, this poem is 6 verses, but each verse is a haiku. Haiku is one of my favorite forms of poetry, and I figured I'd just keep doing haikus until the poem was over. This is called Senses. The scent of roses spreading through the forest air tell me she is near. I hear sweet music comforting my very soul, her soothing singing. The love in her eyes beckon like a forest sprite. Come to me, my love. She gives a long kiss. The embrace is meant for me. I taste her sweet lips. I feel her warm touch and the beating of her heart holding her so close. I can feel her near, though we are miles apart. Our spirits combine. Philip Burgio.
All right. Thank you for sharing.
Excellent.
Very well done on the haiku cycle, as you could call it.
I'm not getting that concept.
So I don't know if you're familiar with the haiku, which is a short poem that's typically 3 lines of 5-7-5.
Oh, right. Yeah, I am. Sorry, I am. Yeah.
Oh, it's okay. He's basically taken that, and every stanza of the poem, all 6 stanzas, are basically its own little individual haiku.
I was only going to write the 5 senses, and then Matt says, what about the 6th sense?
Excellent.
He says, you were so close. This is for my wife who passed away a couple years ago. So I added a 6th sense to it.
I'm glad you did. I always felt like you guys had a strong connection that went beyond the normal senses.
Yeah, and I was going to say, when you sent me the poem and I was reading it, I noticed that each sartre focuses on a different sense, like smell, hearing, sight.
Yes, that was the intent.
That was the intent, yeah?
Yeah. I'm glad you picked up on that.
Oh, yeah, that was obvious, wasn't it? No? What I did pick up on at the end when you said, even if we're miles apart, we're not, sort of thing at the end.
Right.
I like how each sartre focuses on a different sense before ending with something deeper than the sense. The idea that people can remain connected even across different distances.
I'm glad you picked up on all of that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I did. That was my favourite poem out of them all.
Nice. Yeah, I like that one as well. All right, well, from here, I'm going to share my poem for the episode. So in talking about the collaboration with Shirley Rose from Poetry Porch, she shared a form with me, just like I shared a form with her. And her form was called the sequential linear rhythm, sort of all linked together. And the idea behind this form is that the second word in the poem starts with the last letter of the first word, and it continues like that throughout the poem, where every next word starts with the last letter of the previous word.
Okay.
And then ideally, but not necessarily, the last word of the poem ends with the first letter of the first word. So I decided to take this poem form and take the challenge and give it a try. My last word does not end with the first letter of the poem, but this is my take on the sequential linear rhythm form by Shirley Rose. It's called Ice Sculptures. Admiring God's sculptures, scenes sunlit tinted, drifting, gliding, giving glow with hues supernatural. Light tomb blue-etched design, now weathering God's sea among glacial leftovers. Scattered decorations showcasing God's skill. Laconic comparisons sourced Donatello or Rodin, neglecting God's supreme engraving, graffiti ice, even nature embraces. Matthew Burgio.
Excellent.
That's from your Alaska trip, isn't it?
Yeah, just a quick background. So the scenes that inspired this poem were my wife and I were recently on an Alaskan cruise, and we went into this area called Endicott Arm, which comes up into the Dawes Glacier. And I looked out our balcony in the morning, and I was like, there's ice floating by, giant ice chunks. And as you got closer to the glacier, there were more and more of these, and they were glowing blue because as the light refracts through it. And there were some interesting and neat shapes that looked literally like sculptures. Like I was like, oh, there's a dragon. There's like a missile launch. There's some mushrooms. And I felt like they had these forms. And so that inspired this concept of writing a poem about God's ice sculpting.
Yeah, what I noticed in the poem is like looking at ice formation as a work of art,
Yeah.
comparing nature's beauty with human artists. Yeah, you were sort of seeing there was more beauty in the nature than human art, I think, anyway. Yeah, you called it gods. Well, am I right?
Yeah. Kind of comparing that to like famous sculptors like Donatello or Rodin. But yeah, that was sort of the idea behind that.
Yeah.
But the form putting it together it's quite the challenge. So I want to thank Shirley for sending me that challenge of writing in this form. It was kind of a brain racker if you want to try one.
With my dyslexia, I don't think so. I'll have a headache for days. No, it was nice to hear it.
Kind of gave me a headache at times.
One thing I like about poetry that for me is I think of as a puzzle. Like to me, that would be a puzzle poem because you have to really think.
Yeah.
Nothing against free verse.
Love free verse.
But I kind of like the puzzle.
Oh yeah, it was definitely a puzzle, definitely a challenge.
Another thing I took from is I like the idea that nature does not need human artists to validate its beauty. That's what I got from it.
Oh, that's very poetic. I like that.
Yeah. I'm a poet.
That's right.
I didn't know it. I'm a poet.
All right, well, from here, we're going to turn to our guest portion of the episode. Natasha, you're the poet. Show us what you've got.
Excellent. This poem's called Ma's Good Biscuit Tin. There's a biscuit tin in every northern house that contains everything except biscuits. You open it full of hope, thinking today might be your lucky day, only to find buttons, batteries, old receipt, and a charger for a phone nobody owns anymore. My ma treats that biscuit tin like the family vault. Don't touch that, she shouts from another room, with the hearing ability of a military sniper. Inside were mystery screws, rubber bands gone brittle with age, 3 safety pins, and a single dead AA battery kept just in case. Just in case. Nobody knows. But northern kitchens run on that kind of logic. A freezer full of tubes labelled ice cream that actually contain curry and a few bits of chicken that's been there since Dad left. The good plates nobody's allowed to use, just in case the king pops in for a brew. As if. And that one wooden spoon, older than most relationships, still surviving every family argument since 1987. Honestly, working class people could survive the apocalypse with elastic bands, half a tin of quality streets, and pure stubbornness. Pure northern stubbornness. By Natasha Akinfolarin.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's like that here too. It seems like every household has call them cookies, a cookie tin full of buttons and threads and needles.
Sewing.
Absolutely.
Sewing equipment here. There's probably one of those tins right behind you, Phil.
Yes, there is.
Sewing equipment in it.
And then I call them junk drawers. It has the old batteries, the chargers, the safety pins.
Definitely.
Got several of those around the house. I loved your poem. I love it.
Oh, thank you.
You talked earlier about a poem making you smile. Well, this one made me smile a lot. And I was even chuckling to myself since 1987. That sounds probably about the year my mom broke her wooden spoon on one of us.
Yeah, definitely. You know that one, isn't it?
I made the mistake of finding it funny and laughed. And if you ever wanted to know how to bring down fire and brimstone, laugh while you're being disciplined by mom. But it was probably right around 1987, so that made me chuckle.
Yeah, that poem was because I'm from the north of England anyway, as you know, and from a very working class background, brought up in a no-nonsense background with the mum or the grandma, the matriarch. Her word was law, and you didn't cross her. And all the women in my family are like that. There's not one, I'm not going to say weak, but not one when we were being brought up, you know. And that was my tribute to them, to the northern women.
Well, I liked it. And you could catch some of that, even though there's the, I don't want to say sort of the comedy in the poem with humor. Well, yeah, humor, not comedy is what I wanted to say. But I was going to say I like that it's juxtaposed with those little bits, like a few bits of chicken that's been there since Dad left.
Yes.
That, you have these little moments that take some things a little more serious mixed in with the humor.
Yes.
And I thought that was good.
Thank you.
And of course, Phil and I forgot to mention, we have a deep freezer full of tubs labeled ice cream that are anything but ice cream. They're various soups, stews.
Yeah, I think we all have, haven't we? Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, we relate to this poem a lot. There's a lot of good things in there.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Wonderful poem. And good memories, too. The whole Ma's Good Biscuit Tin. I love that. My immediate thought was my mom had the biscuit tin of her sewing, needles, threads, and things, and probably amongst other things, but
definitely, yeah.
So yes, thank you for sharing that.
That's my pleasure.
Natasha, give us another one.
Another one? All right. It's a bit more serious. So this is the Slow Disappearance. It's about domestic violence and narcissistic relationships. It's quite personal, but it's not in my life at the moment. I always think it's good to share your experience because you never know who it's going to help, and I know a lot of people are still in that kind of relationship. I'm just blessed I'm not, but I always like to think if they hear or read my poem, they know they're not alone. That means a lot to me, yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So it's called The Slow Disappearance. It didn't happen all at once. Never does. It never starts with chains around your waist or bruises loud enough for strangers to notice. It starts quietly. A comment about your clothes that makes you look fat. A sign when you laugh too loud, it wasn't really that funny. A question about who keeps texting you. You've seen someone else. Then suddenly, you're explaining yourself for existing. You shrink little by little, eventually trading freedom for peace, mistaking control for care. Your world grows smaller, friends disappear, dreams get packed away like winter coats on a rainy day. You no longer have permission to wear what you want. Permission? And the cruelest part, they call it love. They say it's protection. Say nobody understands you like the way they do. Meanwhile, you lose your voice slowly. You almost don't notice. The silence replaces it until one day you look in the mirror and realise you become a stranger inside your own life. By Natasha Akinfolarin.
All right, thank you for sharing.
Wow, that was deep. I can feel the pain coming out in it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just pondering the progression. I think you're right, of course, that it doesn't happen all at once, that it's that slow creeping up and taking over control of your life little by little. And I was thinking about way back in episode 15 guest, Diana Caprina. Sounds like a lot of stuff she talked about, and even her book, Borderline, talks a lot about this, how she was in a toxic relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a lot I could see in comparison with this as far as like how that takes over your life and that control. And I think you do a good job of bringing that out in the poem here. And I think you're right that people can hear this, and even though it's deep and personable, something they might be able to connect with and help them heal. And like you said, realize they're not alone.
Definitely. And I never want sympathy because I'm out of that, but I know there's a lot of men and women and children are still in that kind of environment. I wrote a book called The Lie that deals with all that and my journey with that. My brother didn't know. For years he didn't know. And I told him last year, and he was like really angry because he said, "Why didn't you tell me? I would have stopped it." I says, "That's why, because I know it would have been just worse, because if I'd told you and he'd come back with me, he would have made it worse." I says, "I had to do it myself." Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And I think it's okay. You need poems like that so that people know they're not alone and there's a way out. There is a way out. And I always say, if men, women, children are in that kind of environment, you are seen. You are seen. And I think it's really important that, even though we don't say it in words, if poetry, somebody said to me once, "Your poem heals me," one of my other poems. "Your poem heals me, helps me heal." And I was like, wow. And you don't think when you write that poem that it's going to have that effect. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And then in the same breath, you get somebody saying, somebody said to me once, "No sympathy for you, you stayed."
Wow.
No, my response was, "In trauma, we are not ourselves." Instead of saying a lot worse, I just said that, and she had nothing to say, because
That's true.
people who've not been through it, I think, need to wake up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Poetry is a good way to get out your frustrations, your anger,
Definitely.
your sadness,
Sometimes your hate.
sometimes your hate. Yeah.
Definitely.
Good way to get stuff out.
I belong to a couple of poetry groups on Facebook and whatnot. And one woman said to me, "Are you okay sharing?" I said, "Since I've been sharing my poetry, I've not been to the therapist once, and I've saved loads of money." I says, "I'm on a winner. I can keep going, I'm on a winner here. It's saving his money in it, and my mental health's never been better."
Poetry is a great therapist.
Isn't it just? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of poetry in general, tell us a little bit about your poetic journey and how you got into writing poetry.
Well, I was brought up in kind of a really strict religious background. And I mean really strict, right? And my punishment was reading the Bible. That was your punishment. Or going around the convent cleaning. You had to read it and read it back to them. And with my dyslexia, I used to make up words because some words I just didn't understand. So I used to make up words. So I used to sit there writing, thinking, well, that probably means that, and that probably means that, right? I'll get a ruler on the knuckles because I got it wrong. But you know what? Then I realised I actually like writing, So I was in a kind of very, toxic situation. But that's how when I start writing. And also, there wasn't a name for dyslexia when I was growing up. They didn't have a name for it. I actually said that I was backward to my mum, that I was backward. But then they couldn't understand why I used to get top grades in maths and physics and stuff like that. So it wasn't until I went to university that I got told I was dyslexic. Not even at college, it was uni. So anyway, I just started writing, and from then I just started making up stories when I was little and writing and journaling, and every time I saw it, I'd have a pen and a paper. So yeah. I don't think I knew what I was doing at first, obviously, but you certainly weren't allowed to write poetry in the convent. But yeah, I used to write stuff under my bed and everything, and it just started from then. That's it, really. It was about 8 I started, I think.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Yeah, and then I clocked out for a bit, had a child, clocked out for a bit because that was that. And then I took it up about 10 years ago again, but I didn't really have time to enjoy it, shall we say. I didn't have time to write a book or anything like I have now and stuff like that. Now it's just flew the nest sort of thing.
Yeah, life will do that to you.
Yeah, that's sort of where I started from, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm mainly a working class poet, so I write about ordinary lives, about the bus, about going to the bus stop, about going to the supermarket, about making the tea. I wrote a poem called Beef Stew recently. Do you know what I mean? It's all about just beef stew, and making it in the process and having a bit of laugh in the poem as well.
I wrote a poem about making beef stew.
Did you?
Nothing wrong with that.
Nice.
I get inspiration from the ordinary. I mean, I don't get inspiration from Kim Kardashian or people like that. I mean, I just don't really want to think about that.
Amen.
But what I'm trying to say is just ordinary people with ordinary lives. I can get inspiration just from having a conversation, especially from having a conversation, especially with my family. It all needs shrinks, but yeah. My next poem is I got inspiration from a movie, especially music. It's really good for dyslexic people to express themselves, you know.
Oh, yeah. And I always love the poetry that is about the most mundane, sort of like the common things that you observe and see. And I think that those are the poems also that people can relate to. I mean, a lot of us are the working class, regular people. And
yes.
Makes me think of Luke Austin Dougherty, and a lot of his poetry, he's sitting in a Waffle House just observing the people around him and draws his inspiration from a lot of that and, just what's going on in that working class life. So that's great.
Yeah. Yeah, I can be sitting on a bus and, I could be at the back of the bus and some people can have a conversation. I'll be like, that's interesting. And I get inspiration from that. Or I've got an inspiration for a poem from a movie the other day. Do you know what I mean? I think we all get inspiration from all walks of life. I don't think it can narrow it down. But I'm mostly a freestyle confessional poet.
Nice.
Yeah, and very freestyle, being dyslexic. I don't really like rules. I'm more about honesty than perfection in my poetry.
Have you published any works? Or are you planning on it?
Yeah, I've got 2 books out. One called The Lie. It's about domestic violence, my journey there. I published that last year. That's on Amazon and Kindle and other streaming platforms. And then also on audio on Spotify as well, YouTube and Amazon Music. And then I've got one called I Fell Into Myself. Everybody talks about what goes on in your head, you know. This book talks about what goes on in the body. For instance, see, like when you're having an episode of depression or when you're having an episode where your brain won't switch off and it's all going on in your head. I kind of talk about what's going on in the body, the shaking, the eardrums popping, your blood pumping, your throat going dry. You've got all these emotions and they should be dead because it happened years ago. So you've got like a graveyard full of stress and worry because it's nothing you can do because it happened yesterday or the day before. But yet we still circle around to what ifs. Why should I? Why didn't I? So that's the kind of thing it is. And I always say if we go through a bout of depression and everything, people say, oh, just take a pill or you'll be all right. Well, no, because I think every experience has value.
Right.
Yeah, especially in the body, because it affects us, yeah? And we always have words for it, but we don't really talk about what goes on in the body. So that's what that book's about. I Fell Into Myself.
Okay.
Quite explanatory, the title. And I published that last month on Amazon and on Kindle.
Well,
doing poetry in a Northern Kitchen. I'm in the process of doing that at the moment.
Well, very cool. We'll definitely share some links for that in the episode notes and on our website. And when you get that Northern Kitchen one out, let us know. We'll help you promote that as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
Natasha, give us another one.
So this one's called Forgotten Love. As I said, I was watching a movie one time and this guy had an accident. I forgot he had a daughter. He forgot he had a wife. Yeah, and I wrote this. It's called Forgotten Love. As I said, you can get inspiration from anywhere. Yeah. Forgotten love. My eyes blink once and I know you. My eyes blink twice and I forget you. You stand in the doorway like you've always stood there. I don't know your name until someone says it. Even then, it feels strange, borrowed. But my body reacts like you're a memory. My chest tightens when you laugh. My pulse shifts when you walk in the room. My hands want to reach for you like they've done 1,000 times before. I watch you, waiting to remember why you matter. Sometimes there's a flicker, an echo in the tone of your voice. Your scent lingers like a story once told. The way you say my name, like it belongs to you. It hits somewhere deep, a bruise without a story. You look at me like I've disappeared right in front of you, like I've died, but I'm still breathing. And I don't know why your sadness feels like mine, deep in my bones. Every day I meet you again. Every day I'm drawn to you for reasons I cannot explain. They say love lives in the mind, but something in my blood disagrees. Something in my skin remembers. The ring on my finger seems important, even if I don't. By Natasha Akinfolarin.
All right, thank you.
I get the impression on this poem that, you saw it from the movie with amnesia, but people with Alzheimer's,
Yes.
with their loved ones and how they have to react. And it's got to be really sad.
Yeah, in the UK, there's a lot of coverage about dementia, Alzheimer's, and they're always talking about studies and that. And that's one of my fears, to not remember.
Yeah.
Not to remember what I've wrote or my family. I mean, I think that's one of my worst fears as well,
Yeah, I'll say I worry about that too, because I know it runs in my family. I know my
Does it?
grandparents dealt with some dementia and things as they got older. And I always say with my maternal grandmother, my mom's mom, that I was so grateful that the last times I visited her, she actually remembered who we were. And so my final memory of her was a positive one compared to some of the other visits where she didn't know who we were or was dealing with the dementia. A lot of things that hit home in this poem, and I do like how it ended. I thought that was a great way to end it. The ring on my finger seems important, even if I don't.
Yes.
It's sort of that memory. And we've seen some of those themes in movies like Phil mentioned, but good poem there. Great way to capture that. And as far as even the connections there between the people, that even if they're not remembering, there's these senses and these feelings and other things going on in the body that they're picking up on.
Yes. Well, I used to work in an old people's home years back, and I still love listening to their stories, because they had great stories, the old people that were there. And some of them remembered some days when I went in the call, and the next minute I go, who are you?
Right.
Even though like that's, yeah. And I was only young then, I was to say to the nurse, what's wrong with that? I said, I just can't remember. And I couldn't understand because she never really explained. But when I was writing this poem, that little thing came into my head as well. And it just goes to show what influences us when we write. It can be memories from today, yesterday. I just think it's really fascinating, what we connect the dots as poets. Yeah.
Right, where that inspiration comes from, even if it's years later.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
One more. Give us another one.
Right, this one's a completely different one. It's about my ex-girlfriend. She's kind of like my muse. So it's called Her Yes. I breathe in deep as I hear her say it. Yes. Not rushed. Not rehearsed. Not something she gives without thinking. There's a pause before it, a breath that settles something inside her. And then, yes. Soft but certain. Not automatic, not empty, but chosen. I hear it in her voice, that quiet shift, where hesitation softens and presence takes place. She's there, fully there, with herself and with me. Not disappearing, not losing herself, but stepping forward with intention, with me. And something in that sound pulls my focus tighter, steadier, not control, but attention that sharpens around her. Because it's not the word that matters, it's the way she means it, the way she offers it without being asked twice. Not given away, but placed gently in my hands. And for me, that changes everything. And that's what I crave from her. Her Yes. By Natasha Akinfolarin.
All right, thank you. I love this because I feel like you can just sense the love and the closeness between the two people. Well done in capturing the closeness. And it's always good to have a muse. I think having a muse really brings out our best work for sure.
Definitely, yeah.
So I was talking about the closest of the two people. It was when you got to that stanza, not automatic, not empty, but chosen. I felt like that really brought in the tightness and closeness of that love between the two people.
Yeah, I think for me, the piece, because I write a lot about survival and trauma, it's very confessional poetry, what I write about, and it's mostly about trauma and bad experiences. And this is one of my poems from my Little Bird collection, and it's more about being ready to trust somebody with the vulnerable parts of you and choosing to trust somebody with the vulnerable parts of you. Like there's an exchange, a quiet exchange that's being built up in you, and you both sort of trust each other to be open enough for that honest, chosen, your choice connection. Because when you've been through lots of bad experiences, it's very, very hard to trust. So it's even more difficult to open up and allow somebody else in, that kind of closeness connection. And I think for me, I wrote this because I write a lot of fractured mind poetry. And I think a part of surviving traumatic experience can be about letting somebody in and trusting again and being comfortable with trusting somebody with that kind of connection, because it's really hard to do that. But once you do, I think it can be quite beautiful, and it can be very rewarding.
Everybody should have somebody like that. And sadly, a lot of people don't have somebody they can open up to.
Yeah, she died. She was the love of my life, but she died. And it wasn't until years later that I could write about it. It took me about 10 years before I even wrote about anything to do with her. Now it brings me joy to think about it. And even though she's not here, she's still my muse, in a lot of my poetry, the connection and everything like that. And I'm not sad anymore about her not being here. She had an illness. There's nothing nobody could have done.
Well, I think honest truth was a good way to sum that up.
Yes.
So to have that, or sorry, not truth, honest trust.
Yeah, honest trust, yeah.
Was a good way to sum that up. Yeah, and I think that's special.
Yeah. Even if I never find that again, I had it and I know how that was, and that's a gift, so I was blessed.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, before we wrap things up, is there anything else you want to say about poetry or your poetic journey?
So I've got a website with all my stuff on, is that okay?
Yeah, definitely. We're here to promote you.
Called Dyslexic Poet, and that's my sort of like my brand. Everybody knows me as the Dyslexic Poet.
You're also on Instagram as well, right?
I'm on Insta, Facebook, TikTok a lot, and mostly old poetry anyway. There's quite a few poets on there. And I have my blog, Dyslexic Poet, and my 2 books. And I'm a spoken word artist as well, so they're on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, all streaming platforms. And that's it, really.
All right. That is a lot going on. Yeah. All right. Well, as we move on, Phil's got just a little bit of feedback, more like a point of information, so to speak.
The last episode, I read a classic poem, Sea Fever, by John Masefield. And I commented on, I think I heard this quoted in Star Trek, and I did. In the original series, if you're familiar with Star Trek, in the original series, I'm not sure what the episode number is, but they have an experiment where AI takes over the ship, to make it more efficient and all that. And Kirk is just kind of bummed about it. And he recites this poem, I Must Go Down to the Sea Again, to the lonely sea and the sky. And it was really fit into the episode.
Excellent.
Thank you for the update. All right, well, as we wrap things up, we want to let our listeners know we're grateful that you've taken the time to tune in. We hope you're enjoying the poetry shared here, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast and share it with others. If you would like to support You're the Poet and what we're doing here, there are a couple of ways to help. You can find links on our website to our Buy Me a Coffee patron site, as well as our You're the Poet store, where you can buy You're the Poet merchandise and share your love of poetry with the world. Thank you for your support as we continue to grow. Please check out our website and various social media outlets to keep up to date with You're the Poet. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and our website, you'rethepoet.com. To inquire about the podcast and being a guest, or to send us feedback on an episode, send us an email to host@you'rethepoet.com. Until next time, Phil, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. And Natasha, nice meeting you.
And you guys, it was great. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thanks for being our guest, and thank you to you both. Goodbye.